Welcome to Servant Leadership Library, where leadership transforms and strategies take flight. Picture this: a dynamic force in the world of business strategy, an EOS implementer, and the visionary author behind the game-changing book Process. Today, we unveil the secrets of effective leadership with Lisa Gonzalez, a strategic leader dedicated to transforming businesses. Get ready for a journey into the heart of proven, driven success and servant leadership. I'm your host, Nick Paluco, and this is Servant Leadership Library. Buckle up for a strategic adventure like no other. So let's introduce our guest today. Lisa Gonzalez has been a passion about supporting entrepreneurial leaders and their team's success since she was a young adult. Lisa grew up as an entrepreneurial family that was pursuing the American dream in Southern California. She often jumped in to help many businesses run more effectively. Lisa graduated from UCLA and attended law school at the University of Texas. After practicing law for several years in Denver, Colorado, she missed the world of entrepreneurs and joined the operations team at a startup residential remodeling firm that was expanding to multiple locations in the United States. After years of using various tools to improve operations with varying success, she implemented EOS in the residential remodeling firm, and it made all the difference. The startup grew to over $20 million in revenue, generated consistent profits, documented and simplified its processes, and developed a leadership team that was healthy and happy in their personal lives. The impact was so profound that Lisa became committed to sharing EOS with other growth-minded companies. She transitioned out of the organization to become a professional EOS implementer. Today is thrilled to help other entrepreneurs get what they want from their business and their lives. Lisa is a former board member of Young Professionals and a member of EO and Vistage. She's also a Titan 100 sponsor. She is passionate about supporting you and your leadership team and will help you take your business to the next level. Let's welcome Lisa. We're excited to have you on the podcast today. Wow, what a career journey. That's pretty amazing. Can you kind of give us a little idea of what that looked like? That seems very impressive.
Absolutely. Thank you. I want to first just say thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be on this podcast and to meet your people. I love getting to know other entrepreneurs and organizations and the people that surround them to help just really impact and improve the lives of the people working with you. So thanks for inviting me. I was really excited when you reached out to me and thought it was a great opportunity to connect. So thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. It's our honor. To talk to you. Yeah, it's our honor. You're a very impressive, leader, and we're really excited to learn from you today.
Well, absolutely, my pleasure. So I missed your original question. I just wanted to really just express my gratitude for being here.
Oh, absolutely. Kind of just explain to the listeners a little bit that impressive career, right? Like we all kind of go through that journey, right? As myself is starting multiple businesses, you were keen in your write-up in that it says that we've tried many things, but you finally found a system, and you state that that's EOS. So kind of help us understand that journey a little bit. What were the struggles? What were the successes that kind of led you to that EOS model?
Absolutely. I think it ties so well in with your podcast too, because I grew up, like, as you mentioned, with a family of entrepreneurs, and we did a lot of things right and a lot of things not so great. And so, what's not written down there, but I think if you've been in entrepreneurial life or a leader in an entrepreneurial company, what's between the line. You can read between the lines, which is, a lot of, we've taken out money against our 401k and against our home to resurrect a business that was dying across the country, and
wow.
The amount of staff training and turnover and all the things that we experienced. That's not written in there, but I think a lot of entrepreneurs know the unwritten. So yeah, we had a great organization. We had a startup in the residential remodel space. I left the practice of law to join that in operations because I knew we were going to open up in multiple cities. Okay. And that so a lot of fits and starts along the way. Realized, well, I'll step back. We had opened up an office in DC. Okay. And we were great at selling, hit revenue goals out of the gate, but couldn't really deliver on the product. And so I was, with my legal background, I was also on some level in kind of the first place when things started to go south, where customers would call and employees would call, and I really managed a lot of the struggles that we were having there, and realized we were in trouble. And it all, yeah, frankly, came back to process. We had opened up one market in Minnesota, had a person with a lot of kind of tribal knowledge of our company that was able to repeat our processes in that other market.
Okay.
We had the company's headquartered in Colorado, then we opened in Minnesota. When we expanded to DC, we hired people that we didn't know at all. We, thought we paid a top dollar for them and thought they know what they're doing, they're going to do great, but we didn't give them any of the tools to be successful, and with including our special sauce and our secret sauce. And so didn't give them the processes, and very quickly, within a year, that we had to close the office down. We took out money against our own personal savings, rebuilt the product, the construction jobs that had not gone so well, and then we kind of left with our tail between our legs. And I share that we vowed never to open up another office again. And then, about a year later, we did again. So,
that is amazing. I mean, you're explaining kind of the standard entrepreneurial journey that not many people see, right? They see the success of a business and they're like, wow, you did such a great job, you must be so happy. But you're explaining kind of the bruises that we all get, right? Like as we grow and develop a business, there is so many ups and downs. It's very highs and lows, and you have to have some thick skin. But you talked about kind of recovering the business based on process. So what does that mean? I mean, process means different things to everyone. What did you have to do that made that secret sauce able to be replicated in areas that you weren't very close to?
Right. Well, this is a great example. I'm a great example of what not to do, and then, figuring it out along the way. And so when it comes to, I don't know what the counter to servant leadership is, but after DC, I decided, that's never going to happen again. And we did a kind of a post-mortem, and I decided to single-handedly capture all of our processes for the company to help both the two markets that were existing, and having a hint that we'd probably open again. So I didn't tell anybody in the leadership team, and I worked nights and weekends documenting everything that I understood, kind of interviewing and capturing the things I didn't understand, and rolled it out to my leadership team, months later, and said, ta-da, probably expecting, to be put on people's shoulders, or maybe, a small street named after me or something like that. And because of my terrible leadership at the time, of course, no one engaged. People didn't, they weren't enrolled in the first place. The way I did it was completely wrong. It's opposite of how I wrote it in the book. I documented 100% of the steps for everything and how you do it. Super high detail. If you think of a 6-inch binder, it was just stuffed to the brim of this is how you do everything short of turning the handle to walk in the door of the office. And that was just coming from a lot of anxiety and fear of I didn't want to lose money again. And so I was leaving nothing to chance. Right. And so I rolled it out, no one looked at it. And even I, very quickly it made its way behind my desk on a, very inaccessible on a bookshelf. And I stopped. I didn't pay much attention to it either, because it was too detailed, no one else was even engaged in the process. It was a perfect example of what not to do for your listeners out there, and for anybody on, and when I speak to people and companies on process, or I speak to, groups, so many people in the audience will nod their head of yeah, I tried that too. Just I did it, I captured it all and no one used it. And so,
well, and is that the difference between process and procedure? Did you feel that maybe your first book had processes but also procedures in them?
Absolutely. I went very deep in, screenshots of how you log in all the way down to everything. So, and so absolutely. And what we teach in the book, and what I teach to my teams now and workshops that I do, is, we do very high level approaches, especially in an entrepreneurial company. We capture high level, 20% of the major steps that will get you 80% of the way there, because your company is moving and changing. And so we capture, what are the core processes we need to capture that we know to help people understand this is the right way to do things.
Way to do it.
And we know that maybe the procedures and sub processes, whatever you call those things, those will change along the way. But as a high level, we're going to first look at this high level approach, a core processes, and then we can do the sub processes and everything else once we get people on board with identifying the right and best way.
And what did you mean earlier that you said, so we're all learning, right? So inquisitive of kind of your journey. But you said, hey, at that time, I felt like I was a bad leader. Maybe I misrepresented what you said. But to you, why did you feel that way? What led you to feel that way?
Oh, it was, well, thank you. You didn't misrepresent. That's probably what I said. Because I had come from a culture of either grinding it out and getting it done. And I had been a
Mm,
lawyer beforehand. And so I very much had I'm going to tell you how things need to be done approach, and, just, drive for results. And it's an exhausting way to live life and
mm.
to be a leader. And so, decades later, it's hopefully not how I show up anymore, but it's, my family was also, I have many lawyers in my family. So I come from a family
Oh,
of lawyers and
okay.
entrepreneurs. And so it just was the natural way to communicate. And it was incredibly ineffective
Mm.
and not kind. And I mean, and it didn't even really align with who I am as a person, but it's just how I thought a leader showed up.
I see. So like at that time, so that's intriguing, right? So like at law school, you're told to, I never went to law school, so I can't even pretend, but I would only assume working with lawyers that you're kind of
Right.
taught to negotiate and to be right, right? So like that,
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what gives you confidence and be able to do your job very well. So you're saying that that was kind of the skill that you were taught to be successful in that career was not necessarily the secret sauce kind of when leading a team, and so what did you have to do to kind of, was it trial and error, or how did you move through that?
All of the above. It was, there's so many things to say here. So I think as a result of being a part of great peer groups like Vistage and
Mm,
EO, and I was an EO spouse member and a YPO spouse member. Today I'm
okay.
an EO member, but um, so being a part of those groups, I was always kind of consuming, and even as a kid, like consuming business books and just
Okay.
business, understanding business stuff, whether it was on, how to run your business or just leadership. And along the way, something clicked. I think specifically when I became a lawyer, I worked in a big law firm, in a corporate law firm, and just started to observe what that looked like, in mass,
Mm,
of seeing other people like me, and realizing that wasn't the model that I felt was in alignment with my own values, frankly. I think it also arose, frankly, even in my marriage. There early on in my marriage, I'm married to a very miraculously still married to this very, very nice person from the Midwest. And the way he communicated was so different. I'm also Puerto Rican, so the way I communicate is so different, and my family's from the East Coast. Just everything was so different. And I realized that there's an effective way to communicate that doesn't have to, like, winning is not the goal necessarily in a marriage
gotcha.
or in any relationship. And so I many times would think to myself, I could win this argument, but at what cost? And
What?
so,
Yeah, right.
because I'm a lawyer, like I can do those things. And so, yeah, be persuasive or do the things I need to do, but that wasn't the goal. So yes, to answer your question in a very kind of vulnerable way, is like I just realized I can win the battle and lose the war kind of approach, and that's
Right.
not my goal in my life. And so I really realized, when you talk about servant leadership, that's what would Jesus do, and that's as a
Right.
Christian, I like started to lean more into that of like this is the goal, and what's going to help not only me and my family, but my clients and my community and the world is that type of approach, being active listener and being more empathetic and all the things that the world, the corporate world that I had come from didn't necessarily
Mm.
support showing up that way.
To that, that's a great way to say that. I think also too, it's like that humbleness, right? Like Patrick
Oh
Lencioni
yeah.
says, like,
Oh yeah.
show up humble, hungry, and smart. And you're like,
Smart.
you embody all those, right? Like you're humble, you as you grew, you became more humble, it sounds like, and yet you're hungry to continue to strive to be successful. And smart, I think, what does he say? You just understand your trait, right? Like, and you continue to improve it. And I think what's
Yes.
really important for those that are listening too is that this is a lifestyle. Like you're continually learning if you want to
Yeah.
improve. I work with a lot of people that want to become leaders, and they think, oh man, for 10 years I did this job, so I should just lead, right? Like I can just lead this organization, when in reality they're so used to doing it on their own, and now they have to switch from more of a humble perspective of it's about the people that I lead, not about myself anymore. And that's hard for a lot of people to make a transition. It's very hard for them to be able to understand that. So I really appreciate you opening up about that. It helps us all learn as well. That's great. Oh, wow. So also family from the West Coast, and you're from the East Coast.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. Well, my family members, like my cousins, are all from the East Coast and from Puerto Rico, but I grew up in Southern California. And
oh, wow. That's different.
Family's the Midwest. So yeah, exactly. Very different.
Wow. You have all the cultures.
Yeah, well, and and learning through the school of hard knocks along the way, maybe people would have captured it more quickly, but I've realized there was some change. I'd say maybe 10 or 15 years ago, where I was like, look, what I'm doing isn't working. Let's figure something else out.
It out. And that's amazing because, that's just the tried and true piece of an entrepreneur, right? Like we don't stop and we work to improve and change. And you even took that further. So you developed process for the business that you were leading at that time to become successful, but then you even took it further and created a whole book about it. So like, I mean, it must have been that successful that you're like, I have to share this with everyone. So kind of explain a little bit. I think in the book you explore like the relationship between process-driven strategies and maybe adding some servant leadership into there. Can you kind of go over that a little bit? What drew you to, create this book in its essence?
Sure. Well, it's part of, it's all part of the journey of just the business growth we had. So as I mentioned, I did we made it processes and captured a lot of detail. No one used it. And we kept kind of just pushing. We ended up opening an office in Naperville, Illinois. And this time though, we had already adopted EOS. Someone had handed us the book Traction. We didn't know there were amazing EOS implementers out there, like my peers. And there goes the humble, right? But there's a lot of people out there that can help you with EOS.
That's just confidence. That's confidence, right?
No, so that was awful. But I just want the world to know, like, we implemented it ourselves, which you can do. And even I think Gino Wickman has said, like, you can take that book and implement, and we did it. And it gave us a lot of great results. We implemented and got all the promises. We got consistent revenue, consistent profit. We grew our leadership team into an amazing group of cohesive and fun and loving people. And so the promises of EOS came true. It just took about 5 years, longer than it needed to, because we were figuring it out as we went. When I got a copy of that book, Traction, almost 10 years ago now, I went straight to the process page and did the approach that EOS recommends. And that's where we started to get that leverage. And so then, fast forward 5 years later, I saw the benefits and became an EOS implementer because I wanted to bring EOS to everybody, to the world. And so been blessed with just a great EOS journey myself, and getting to see other companies benefit from just implementing EOS. Along the way, EOS was looking for the next co-author in the Traction library. And I was selected, and I was fortunate to work with the former visionary of EOS as well, Mike Payton. And so we wrote the book, launched it a couple of years ago, and it's been incredibly well received because nothing like it exists. We wrote it for my visionaries, like just to have them engage just enough to make it successful so they can get all the stuff they want from their business: freedom and growth and scalability and time to innovate, rather than just constantly working on the same problems over and over and over again. And so that's how that happened. It's been beautiful. The EOS community has really embraced it, and I get to speak and talk about process all the time, which is really fun. And I get to do workshops and train other people on doing this work to really get results in like the least painful and hopefully a fun way, that the most fun way possible. So that's how that all played out.
And for those who don't know it, which I can't believe they wouldn't, but those that don't know EOS, give a little understanding of what you and I understand as EOS. And you said the results, but can you kind of give a little understanding of what EOS is in its entirety?
Correct. Sorry, and I hate when I jump into acronyms early. So
EOS, no, that's all right. I'm the technology field. Everything's an acronym, so I apologize.
Well, thanks for stopping me there. So EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It was started by Gino Wickman and his partner, Don Tinney, about maybe 15 years ago. And it helps companies get better at three things that we call vision, traction, and healthy. So vision, through the work we do, and it's not a software, but it's just an operating system for your business. So vision is getting everyone in your organization 100% aligned on where you're going and how you're going to get there. And then traction is instilling discipline and accountability at all levels of the organization so that everywhere you look, everyone understands the vision and has the rhythms and just tools to execute on that vision. And then healthy, because of the work that we do as in our companies that are running on EOS, we're just very open and honest, and we address the issues. And so we become very healthy because we attack what's getting in our way. And so we become more cohesive, more fun as a team. And so we first start at the leadership team level, and then we work throughout the rest of the organization after the leadership team has, done some work to make sure we've gotten that momentum. And it's when people work with an implementer, it's a minimum 2-year journey or just mindset that this is the work we're going to do to help you get what you want from your business. And so it's like the best career anybody could ever have, and the best when people work in companies running on EOS, they all, it just gets woven into how you run your business.
Right.
And you just get to, we say not only run a better business, but you just get to live a better life, which is why I love this work so much, because I get to make that type of impact, not only for my leadership teams, but in the lives of their team, their employees, and more so, like, then those employees go home and they're happier people and their kids are happier and the community's better. So it's just this like amazing gift that keeps on giving. And because I've done it so long, I get to see like the dreams really do come true, and it's just such a blessing.
It is a blessing. You're absolutely right. I think you kind of paired to what you said earlier when you were starting that business, and then you kind of met EOS, and it kind of just amplified, or in our world we call traction, right? What would you say like are the one or two things in the beginning that were kind of aha moments that allowed you to get some more traction? I know you self-implemented, but what were kind of the key things that helped you and your team kind of cohesively get together and be successful right away?
So many things. And, now I've done hundreds and hundreds of sessions with other companies, so I get to globally share in my experiences. And it's clarity for my leadership teams. It's people being in the right seats. I think the visionaries so the founders typically of my companies and entrepreneurs, I'd talk more about that too, but my founders really seeing their value in what they bring to an organization beyond just, working endless hours in areas that they're probably not even that strong at. So helping them get better at putting the right people in the right seats, people that are really great at doing the thing they're great at, and letting my visionaries be free to do the great stuff they do, whether it's relationships or company culture or just, solving a problem with, 5 minutes of thought, because they have such a different way of thinking about things. I come from a family of, like, as you know, entrepreneurs. My children have those same kind of qualities, some of my children. And I think that kind of creative, high energy, often ADHD people that are so valuable to this world, and that they see the world in such a different place. And I think often those are the people that, school didn't work so great for them. And me getting to sit in the room with them and say, like, and like, you are seen and your values amazing, I feel like it's like what I've been put on this earth to do, because these are the people that, that say we're going to go to the moon or have a new idea. And they actually, if they can get people around them to help them execute it, they can go on and innovate on the next thing. So yeah, it's amazing. I talk about it forever. So yeah,
it is amazing.
My favorite conversation.
I get excited about it too, right? So we've been with EOS for maybe about 3 years, going on 3.5 years, maybe a little longer. And what I thought was interesting is I just thought I was weird, right? Like as this bigger thinker, nobody ever understood me. So I'm like, I must just be a misunderstood person. And so as the business grew, then actually going through the process actually helped me realize that I wasn't crazy. Like, and that sounds weird, right? Like, but at a certain point, you're like, hey, you're used to working with doers and executors, and they're like, who is this guy? He changes his ideas every 5 minutes. When in reality, I wasn't changing my ideas. I was just talking to the wrong people. And what was really empowering is what they call about kind of that visionary integrator. And unknowns to us, we had the integrator, but there wasn't a system to be able to actually talk about that separation. And when that happened, it was a huge aha moment of like, hey, we're not as crazy as we thought. You actually, there
Correct.
is other, my integrator said there is other people in this world like you, in a kidding,
Yeah.
jovial way. But it was a very big aha moment of like, wow, like, this can really hold back a lot of organizations if people are misunderstood. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it holds back human beings because if you've been told your whole life, focus, stick with one thing, follow through, all the things that visionaries don't do, it's putting a square peg in a round hole. And I think, there's educational systems that I could have a whole conversation about too. But, we need our visionaries. And for those that aren't familiar with the term, it's typically the founders of an organization, and they come to every meeting with 20 new ideas. They're big picture thinkers. They're actually creative problem solvers. Think of all your creatives that are founders of companies. They're willing to take risks, all those
That's
qualities
right.
of visionaries. If you haven't read the book, there's a book called Rocket Fuel that defines this relationship. And little bonus tip, I believe I am married to a visionary. I am married to a visionary, and I believe Rocket Fuel also just helps you understand like your marriage, because if you understand that the person that's saying, kids don't have to go to bed, let's travel, let's live in Costa Rica for a year, and as a very operational person, I'm like, no, actually I want people to go to bed on time, and I want us, to live in one city, or all of that. So if you understand the balance and the benefit and how to between that relationship and that dynamic, if you respect each person's qualities, that rocket fuels, you can go to the moon if you combine them and respect them both. And so whole other topic there we can have another time.
It actually is a great topic though, because it talks about kind of, you talk about a lot about process, but that process is also like, where does everyone fit? You used the term earlier, like right people in the right seat, and kind of everybody kind of respecting and knowing where they seat and where they contribute, I think was key, right? It sounds very basic, like, well, this is where you contribute, but knowing that there is a structure where you can contribute. I think that I'm smiling because you say about like at home, right? The same concept. So when that was figured out, it was like, okay, my children have similar capabilities, and we had to work with them on how to communicate. So we use Colby's, which is part of EOS, and different things, and said, hey, listen, we're all similar but different, but might be the best way to communicate to your mother, who has system and process, whereas you might be creative and detailed and might have 100 ideas. However, you have no intention of doing all 100 ideas, but you've already frustrated the person working with you if they don't know that that is not action, right? I think a lot of it was always
we'll make it happen. You give me an idea. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think they're afraid of like visionaries in the standpoint of all those ideas they're just going to now run with and make everybody else's life difficult. And I think
Yes.
that is not the intention, but it is neat to see how it works in our personal and business life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And in fact,
absolutely.
since we've been a part of running EOS in our business for 10 years, we actually do run it at home as well. So we have weekly level 10 meetings with since our kids are now, one's almost one's in college, but when they were 7 and 9, and now we have a third kid, but we have, and to this day, we have weekly level 10 meetings on Sunday, and it's not the same agenda. I tried that. No one followed it, but it's an agenda that works for kids, right? Which is, what worked this week, what didn't work, and what are your issues.
Right.
And we check calendars. It's a very simple agenda that can hold everyone's attention and keep our household running in a very peaceful way. And so it's, it's just another operating system just for your home. And so, yeah, these tools and other implementers similarly in other companies, other families run on a similar model to help run the business of your family.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. Wow. Very, very many similarities. So my wife and I instituted level 10s on Saturday mornings. We go coffee, get away from the kids, and kind of talk about those sort of things. Yeah, it doesn't always work, but it's fascinating when I think you're talking about just in business, process has a place of keeping us on the same page. But like these level 10 meetings also get us on the same page. And I think it's very powerful to be, when you're on the same page, you can move things along effectively. And it's amazing learning this journey that how often and how quickly we all get out of sync. and it's not intentional, but when we can focus effectively, it's very powerful. Yeah, that's amazing. That is neat. I love hearing that people are drawing that all the way into their family life as well. Um, let's talk a little bit more about the process and kind of your book as well. Like, can you give us some key principles or key kind of
Would love to.
takeaways in the process book, and maybe how that makes us better leaders or allows us to lead more effectively by instituting these processes, and maybe define when we say process, what do you mean by that? Like, could you give an example for everybody to understand?
Absolutely. So would love to. Every organization has a handful of core processes. You have a process for HR, how you interview people, onboard them, manage them, and exit them. There's a process for marketing, how you nurture or draw potential clients into into your funnel. You have a process for sales, how you qualify a lead and then close them and keep serving them. And at the point when you start to provide your service or product, you have operational processes, right? So we just run through the whole line, and we're kind of a linear approach of every company has these core processes. You may call them something different and your processes look different, but every company has these processes down to multiple operational processes, finance processes, customer service, like to the end. And even if you're running on EOS, you have a process for running your business. And even if you're not running on EOS, you probably have a process for running your business. Just is it consistent? And so we have proven ways that we know work in our organization on how we run the business. That's what we mean by our core processes. The book, when we wrote it, is intended to really written for my visionary leaders and entrepreneurs who hate the word process. When I bring up the word process, and for my operational people or integrators, I'm like, this is for you to just give you like some level of empathy I understand, because even early on in our residential remodel company with some of my clients before the book was written, I would talk about process, and one actually put his head on the table and pretended to cry. He's like, why are you talking to me about this? Someone else is like, we can talk about it later, and just kept putting me off on it. And the reality is, it's your ticket to freedom. And so the book is written for my visionaries to understand, like, the things you think about process just aren't true. We're not going to turn your people into a bunch of robots. We are going to, it actually, process is going to give you the freedom to do the innovation and growth that you want. Process does not take too much time, because the approach we're talking about isn't what I did early on in my career. It's a very high level approach that, month over month, quarter over quarter, we're going to get all of your processes documented and simplified and followed by all in the course of a year. And so we just, and more importantly, we're going to document them, but then we're going to get the training started to have people to follow them. And we have a process in place for making sure they get updated. So all of the concerns that my visionaries or entrepreneurs have around process I just show how quickly they're debunked, and actually it's the thing, you're avoiding the thing you need the most as a leader.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think you're obviously absolutely right. You're kind of an expert in this area. But my affirmation is just from many of the people that say, hey, they don't want to deal with process, probably are struggling to grow, I would imagine, right? Because you mentioned earlier, they have the process, but it's probably in their head, or one person knows it. I know from our experience, we had hyper growth, and that was really exciting. But every one of our employees knew our process differently, because they came into the organization at a complete different time. And that was prior to us implementing your book and utilizing, creating those core processes. Because what we realized is that when we wrote them down, oh my goodness, over 10, 15, 5, however long it was, we realized that they actually changed, amazingly enough, right? And it gave us an opportunity to be like, okay, wonder why this problem continues to happen. We never wrote that down or taught the person to kind of whisper down the lane. And it gives you a great opportunity, I believe, to then onboard and scale a lot faster, because you're able to quickly educate someone on what is the core process, which I could also imagine lines better with accountability too. So would you agree with that or no?
Absolutely true. And you said something that I think is so key. Is one is, we didn't, either the tribal knowledge that people have is the issue. And so if someone leaves, you lose that information, or someone joins at a different part of of your stage of growth, that's going to be an issue. And I've likened it to a game of, a very bad game of telephone, like business telephone, where I'm going to tell one person how to do something, they're going to tell the next person.
Yep.
We're banking our business growth and success on that approach, which is, not effective, of course, because how the game telephone goes, right? And so, and at the end of the day, I believe our people are trying to do the best and figure out the best way to get things done, but they're figuring it out on their own. So maybe they're bringing, an approach that came from another company, or just, whatever those options are, because this is the fastest way to get this done because I have these other things to get done. It's not necessarily the right and best way to do it. And that's what we as leaders have to drive. And so the workshops I'm doing and the program I'm teaching companies on this is really about driving radical accountability. Like, it's great to let people get things, do things on their own until it isn't. And so as we scale, we have to drive accountability for, like, reminding people, this is actually the right and best way to do it, unless, until you hear otherwise, or you can show me that there's another more effective way.
Well, and I think what's great too, and I might quote it incorrectly, but in the book, I thought it was fascinating that as a visionary, you're like, oh man, I'm gonna have to write all that down. Like, I'm not interested in that. I want to do that. But in your book, you're like, hey, like, one simple concept is find someone that's good at writing it down and just meet with them and go over it verbally, which we're really great at. Many entrepreneurs are really great at verbally explaining it, and let them write it down. And I was like, wow, what a simple concept that is, just amazingly simple, but freeing, right? Like, I don't want to write it down. Like, and it sounds silly, right? Like, why wouldn't you want to write it down so somebody else can do it? But you think that you don't have enough time. And that is a really great way to get the process documented, because there's a lot of people in your organization that probably love to document. They just don't know what it is. And
correct. They're there for you. Absolutely. I mean, I've even taught people, Nick, to just take out your phone and record, just talk through it, because not everyone's type. Not everyone wants to type or do it. Like, just record what you're doing and then give it to somebody else to capture it. So there's all sorts of ways, and it all works. And so that's, the flexibility of our approach, but it's effective, as you said. So I think that's a great example of how this is just a little thing that gets in our way from getting this work done. And with, with support of the book or coaching or whatever that looks like, you can push through those initial barriers and have the success that you deserve.
Yeah. How do you see then too, most of them implement the process, right? Because many are like, okay, we have it written down, or we got to get it all done, right? And so what we learned was, hey, listen, there was a set of core processes. We can't do it all right now. So we're going to have to do, a couple a quarter and work to do it our very best and work through the process. But how do you coach people to kind of like implement or train on those core processes after they're documented?
That's exactly right. We, for companies that are running on EOS, they operate under a 90-day world where they create 90-day goals and accountabilities that we call rocks. And my leadership teams will pick what are the processes we're going to document this quarter, what are the processes we're going to get followed by all. And so the two tools we use to get our processes, become a strong process, a process strong company, is we call it the 3-step process documenter and the followed by all checklist. In the 3-step process documenter, we identify, document, and simplify and package our processes. And the followed by all checklist, we make sure we are doing the training to get those processes adopted. We're measuring using scorecards. We're managing people to the results, and we're updating. So what we do, just much like the approach you've taken, is every quarter my leadership teams will select the process they're going to, and what piece of it they're going to work on through those 90 days. And eventually you'll have the rest of the organization running on EOS. So those teams are also going to be working on, hopefully picking a rock around process, because it's a forever journey. And if we just chip away at it, 1 week at a time, 1 quarter at a time, you'll get the results you want.
Very good. And you also explain, like, hey, the processes need tweaked frequently. How do you know, or when do you revisit, right? Everybody's listening going, oh goodness, like, I have to document all this, and now you're telling me I have to update it. Like, what's the general, like, who generally is the one that calls out that it needs updated? And if not, there's not somebody calling out, like, what's the general practice to go and look at those processes, or, update them?
We in our workshops, in our program, we teach, it's at least annually, and we have an
Okay.
owner assigned to each process. And so that
Gotcha.
person's accountable. And to keep things simple for people running on EOS, or for anyone that's not on EOS and's trying to do this work, it's just, you use your calendar, right? You put on your calendar, this process was launched, and throughout whether it's every quarter or half year or a year, you're going to find there's changes that need to happen. And so who's responsible for updating? And it's not only updating from I'm going to correct the typos and stuff. I teach my teams to take the time to
Mm.
think about the process. Are there ways we can streamline it, update it with software, stay ahead of our competitors? That's what that looks like when we talk about update as well, because I know my visionaries have ideas like, why can't we do it this way now? And we can, and we just need to make sure, what we've done is what we're doing now effective. And if we do need to update it, let's capture that and roll that out. So a little more I want to be clear. Sometimes my visionaries want to keep updating and changing a process. And that's just, you're not really updating your process. You're test, you're doing like test cases, and that's different. So I wouldn't update that. I would update what we're actually doing, because it can get very confusing very quickly.
Gotcha. And in a literal standpoint, for people trying to connect this, like say I owned a restaurant and they had a process to make a sandwich. Is that the process you're talking about? Or like, kind of put more a visual to that for those to kind of connect to it?
Yeah. Great idea. So your core process, let's say, would be operations, right? Some level of operations, delivery of your product. Your sub process would be how I make the sandwich, how I deliver, how I make the side salads or the sodas, or how we clean the restaurant when people leave, or how we greet our guests. Those are all sub processes. And undoubtedly those are going to change fairly often, or not fairly often, but those will change more frequently compared to your core process, which your core process, you're always going to be delivering your product or your service to your customers. You're always going to clean the restaurant at the end of the day. The sub process may be, now let's use mops instead of brooms, or the Swiffer. I mean, those are sub processes, and that stuff changes, which is why, this is a forever journey, because you're always thinking and innovating to become the best company you can be.
It can be. Yeah, I think that's well said. I think many people that get scared in process think it's like writing, how to make the sandwich. Whereas in reality, it's bigger than that. It's just steps that you take to get to the result, right? And it's not, all the details, which scares visionaries, right? Like, details, I'm scared of that. That's too much. It's overwhelming. And this is more about taking it even bigger, right? Which is why you probably say that this is for visionaries, because, it's thinking that big. It's not getting into the weeds of that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Another great example is, I know that pay my employees is a part of my core processes. Now, whether I write a check to pay them or put it through ADP or direct deposit, those are the how. And we're just going to start with what do you need to do, so that we know this is what we need to do every 2 weeks. The how will change however frequently it's going to change.
That's very good. That's awesome. It's an amazing, amazing thing. We talk about process, but everybody thinks about it so differently. And I think you're bringing a lot of clarity to that. Kind of before we end here, but switching a little bit, I want to get back to kind of like your leadership, right? Can you educate us? You're now in so many leadership roles, but can you kind of give some tips and tricks for people that are just starting their leadership journey? Because it seems like you've learned a lot. Do you have any advice for anyone on what to do, how to improve in their leadership skills that could be advantageous for them?
Sure. I am a big fan of peer groups. So whether it is Vistage or EO, or there's also, beyond that, there's other groups out there. And so the reason is you have peers going through the same thing that will call you out on stuff. And so if they see you showing up, and you also get to model when you see, wow, I like this person's leadership style. Let me learn more about that. So surrounding yourself by people who you want to grow into is a beautiful thing. I think reading anything by Patrick Lencioni is fabulous. I'm still constantly reading, and so I think that's a great, or listening, whatever that looks like for you, is also a great, just a great way to continue growing. As you mentioned, this is a journey. If I've given any hint that I've arrived, I have not. And so, but it's just something that, thank goodness, that people have given me grace to continue to grow in these roles, and especially as an EOS implementer. I get to be in the rooms with people. And so, I'm constantly working on practice, active listening and being empathetic and asking questions versus just being a teller and driver of my
Mm.
agenda, because it's so much more exhausting, first of all, to live that the former way. And
Yeah.
so when I see people in my rooms, even that are still in that space as leaders, I just want to say, come to the gentler side. It's so much easier
Yeah.
and so much more impactful, not to mention.
It is. One thing that I heard from you too is kind of that being inquisitive and asking questions. I think so many of us are taught that that's not a good thing. Like, don't question someone. However, in life, the more questions they ask, the more that you learn, right? And I think that that's so impactful. But you said even as a leader, listening instead of
Oh,
talking as
yeah.
much, right? That is very difficult for myself as well, and kind of practice a lot. But you're right, peer groups, if you trust them, also call you out in a great and wonderful way, not in a negative way, that allows
Yeah.
you to be able to make that change. So that's great. That's amazing. So what's next in the journey? Tell us a little bit about you talked about these workshops. So you wrote the book and now you're like, listen, I got to take this journey further. So talk to us a little bit more about your new journey with kind of these workshops and whatnot.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. And thank you. You've made a lot of references to reading the process book, and I appreciate that because it's written for people like you. And so I love that it resonated. I get to hear that often, and it made it all worth it, and it makes me happy. And so, the next journey is we have a process success workshop or process success program for companies that are running on EOS. And it's
Okay.
really to help them give them the radical accountability to get their it's courses, and it's a community, and it's coaching that really will help them get unstuck and
Ah,
teach them the leadership skills they actually need, is the heart of it, to get their
okay.
processes documented and followed by all in the organization.
So all those people that say, well, I don't want to do this, you're now empowering them and helping them work through it. Takes kind of the nerves away. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. It's not even, I think it's not even the people that don't want to do it. It's because it's for my process champions in these
Okay,
companies.
so the ones that
It's
love to do it.
the
Yeah.
ones that love to do it, but that their leadership team or the visionary
Mm,
is, or even the organization just keeps getting stuck and not getting the
mm,
progress. And at the end of the day, it's for my visionaries and my founders to get the results they want a lot quicker. And at the end of the day, this
okay.
work comes down to people or process. And you're doing great
Mm,
work with EOS, and we just have to do the work to get our processes. And so it's just giving people the community of support, whether it's the emotional support or the tools to share best practices when it comes to getting your processes documented. But more, past that first stage is, how do we get them followed? What do great training rhythms look like in our company? How do we drive accountability
ability.
so that we can just continue to grow and scale as companies, or live? You don't even have to grow, just but run our companies and spend our time doing the thing we envisioned when we started, either as the founder of a company or someone joining an entrepreneurial company, so they can just kind of live the life of their dreams.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you talked about kind of that champion for process. Those that are new to EOS and maybe don't have it all figured out yet are ones that are so inquisitive now about us talking about EOS, they're going to check it out. How does one find their champion? Like, how do you encourage them to find their champion of the process?
So if they're new to EOS and if they're working with an EOS implementer, they will absolutely guide them. It's typically either my integrator or my head of finance. Like, those are the types of
Okay.
personality, very operation or head of operations. Typically those people. The leadership team picks the process champion together,
Okay.
but
Okay.
it's often the person that has their hand raised, like, I'm on fire about this. Let me do that.
I'm
And if
ready
they're
to
not
go.
working with it, yeah, and if you're not working with an implementer, it's just those same people. It's, you have an accountability chart. You're clear on who's accountable for what, and who's the person that says, I want to take this on and support at a leadership level, getting our work done so we can get the results that we want.
Mm, mm. That's wonderful. And so, how can the listeners find out about your workshops or even the book? Where's the best way to gather that information?
Well, thank you. Well, if anyone wants to join me, I have a website, lisagonzalez.com, and Gonzalez is all Z, so GONZALEZ.com. And you can sign up for our newsletter. You can find out we have a new cohort starting every kind of
Mm,
couple of months or every quarter for the
okay.
process program. We're kind of enrolling people and selecting people that we think can do the work. And to find out about the book, similar, you can find it on our website. It's also on Amazon.com and booksellers near you.
That is awesome. I had a prospect I was talking to about EOS, and I sent him your book on
Thank
process because they were struggling with that. So they were very excited to get the book, and
Awesome.
I think I've taken the opportunity to try to improve a little bit more than because their growth has caused them to, I guess, in essence, break some of their processes maybe that they thought they had.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a big point, Nick, is, both EOS and this process work, they're for companies that are doing really well. Like there's
Right.
companies that you're like, we know what we're doing, we're growing, and it's just getting out of our, like, we can't keep it together anymore and we
Right.
need help. So I'm rarely working with companies that, like, we're about to go out of business. Like, that's not who EOS is for, because you
Right.
have other things to attend to there. Like maybe it could be anything. But these are companies that are doing well and they just want to take it to the next level, and they know there's a way to be more efficient, more effective. They're tired of just the struggle of always either in firefighting mode, they're
Right.
frustrated, and they just know, like, there must be tools out there to help us
Right.
deliver our company to the world in a much more efficient way. And
That's
so
right.
I think your point is very well taken of companies that do well, like this is the space for them because they're just at that next level of growth.
Right. Yeah, it just amplifies it and gets them a little bit more,
Yes.
no pun intended, more traction as they
Yeah.
develop in their business. Ah,
Yes.
well, this has been wonderful. You've spent a lot of time with us. We really, really appreciate it. And we're going to work to kind of wrap this up on this episode of Servant Leadership Library. A big thank you to the queen of process herself, Lisa Gonzalez, for facing us with her wisdom and giving Servant Leadership Library an upgrade. Now, listeners, you're just had a master class in leadership served with a side of cheeky charm. If you enjoyed today's episode, show us some love by hitting the subscribe button, share with your fellow leaders in crime, and leave us a review. That's a glowing one, by the way. And check out Lisa's insight at her website that she told you about earlier. And of course, don't forget to check out the book Process. You can find it on Amazon, and spicing up kind of your life with a little bit of process. And Lisa, any parting words of wisdom that you want to leave the visitors of the podcast today?
Just keep up the continued growth and keep leaning into both servant leadership and this work, because the world needs companies that run really well, and the world needs leaders that are compassionate and empathetic. And so the more you can do this work, the better off we'll all be.
Well said, Lisa. Well, there you have it. Until next time, keep leading with sass and class and touch of process magic. This is Servant Leadership Library signing off. Stay inspired and lead on.